Good afternoon, everyone, or morning, I guess, depending on what coast you're on. Thank you so much for joining us today. We're really excited for this presentation. Just to get a couple of housekeeping things out of the way while we still have people trickle in, feel free to introduce yourself in the chat. We'd love to hear you. Maybe share what organization you're with, where you're tuning in from, what the weather's like today. It's a little gloomy here in Atlanta, Georgia. Um, but again, we're really excited to have you all here today and excited to kind of engage in this conversation. This presentation is being recorded, so if you jump up and grab a glass of water or answer the door because you've got a package delivered or something like that, you can always come back to this page and check out what you missed. You'll receive a link to the recording in your inbox after we've concluded, and this slide deck is also available in the handouts tab under apps along that kind of bar in the bottom right corner there. We're really excited to have you all here with us today. And to go ahead and get started with more formal introductions, my name is Grace. I am a member of the partnerships team here at Double the Donation. If you're not familiar with Double the Donation is the leading provider of tools to nonprofits and educational institutions to help them raise more money from corporate matching gift and volunteer grant programs. And I'm lucky enough today to be joined by Jack from the Giveffect team. So I'll go ahead and hand it off to Jack to introduce himself.
Hi, welcome everybody. As Grace said, I currently manage our client success team here at Giveffect. And yes, for any of you who may not have heard of us at Giveffect before, we're a 10-in-1 nonprofit tech platform, everything from CRM, donation management, volunteer management, communications, and more. Basically, we just want to give you that 360-degree view of your supporters and community members. We do only serve nonprofits and work with teams of all sizes. But while being an all-in-one, of course, we do have great partnerships like with Double the Donation here, so that our partners can have all the options in their arsenal. So very much look forward to discussing these different strategies with you all today.
Awesome. Thanks, Jack. And thanks again for being here with us today. I'm really excited to kind of bring this presentation to you all and share some of our expertise as we head into end of year giving season. I know everyone's kind of, I'm sure your head's down, planning for the weeks to come. So we really appreciate you taking some time out of your day to join us. So, to go ahead and set the stage for today's presentation, I want to give you a quick overview of what our agenda is going to look like, some of the 5 strategies we're going to be talking through to help you increase your individual and corporate contributions this end of year giving season. And so while we'll dive into these each a little bit more, I do want to just go ahead and give you all a quick peek as to what we're going to be talking about. So, personalization and segmentation, capitalizing on existing partnerships, setting a goal and sharing it, following up on matching gifts, and getting creative with your outreach. I do want to say I'm sure that a lot of you are kind of incorporating these strategies in some capacity in what you have planned already. So, hopefully, this presentation will give you a little bit more concrete ideas to take home with you or take back to the office with you, whatever you want to call it, to go ahead and set you up and propel you forward for end of year giving season. So, to go ahead and dive right into personalization and segmentation, again, like I mentioned, I'm sure a lot of you are doing some variation of this already. And so, our hope today is to give you some really tangible strategies to implement after we wrap up this presentation and take home for a really fruitful giving season and to really just empower you to go to the extra mile for your mission. And so, first and foremost, personalization helps your organization cut through the noise during one of the busiest fundraising times of the year. I'm sure you're all familiar with Giving Tuesday and end of year giving season and how there's really a big uptick in terms of just leveraging nonprofits getting out there on social media, raising awareness. I'm sure everyone's inbox will have lots of different emails, lots of different outreach. And so it's really this idea of cutting through that noise and making a really personal connection with your donors. The hashtag Giving Tuesday gets billions of impressions every year alone. And so you'll really want to start thinking about ways to set yourself apart and reach your audience and potentially new prospects in a new and really exciting way. And I think the idea here is that personalization really takes us past this idea of starting off an email with, "Hi, friend," or thanks for reaching out about our organization. We really want to take it the extra mile. And whether it's throwing out an exact donation amount of the last donation they made, thank you so much for your donation of 5240 a year ago today, or something along those lines, to really recognize and resonate with the donor that you do know them and they are just as much a part of the team as you are. I think that's something that can be a little scary sometimes, is how much do we want donors to let them know we know about them. But something that a colleague of mine actually made aware to me recently is that a good chunk of donors actually know that you know things about them. A good chunk of us as well, thinking about Gen Z, millennials, and younger generations, have grown up as kind of digital natives. And so they have this idea that companies, for profit or nonprofit, are collecting data about them. And we are all so used to targeted ads on our social media. We know that the algorithm knows us. And so you can kind of use that information you have to provide really tailored, targeted messaging to connect with your donor on a deeper level. Because again, this idea is they do know that you know things, and it's to your advantage to incorporate that. So whether it's sending a birthday message or saying, thanks so much for your gift 6 months ago, or if you know the why behind their giving. These are all a really great way to send really personalized messaging and cut through some of the noise of those more generic, just giving oriented emails. And so, what personalization really allows you to do is engage in this idea of donor centric fundraising, which I think is becoming more and more important kind of across the board in terms of building lasting relationships and donor stewardship in general. And so, kind of leaning into personalization is also this idea of segmentation. And so, we have a couple of examples of segmentation groups here on the screen, something that you're thinking of in terms of major donors or recurring donors. This is likely something you're probably already familiar with in some capacity, but segmentation is a really great way to, again, take that personalization element one step further. And I'm actually going to hand it off to Jack here to talk a little bit more about the value of segmentation and what you can actually do with it.
Awesome. So yeah, some things that I really want to harp on for you guys today is that these don't have to be, as we talk about these potential supporter groups, these don't have to be their own siloed groups of people. When we're thinking about end of year giving, don't limit yourself to only looking at donation history, right? That is just one aspect. Of course, depending on your organization, there are many ways your folks can show support. Look at those who have volunteered for your organization. Try to query for those who maybe have attended your events throughout the course of the year. Look at what communications, whether direct mail, email, maybe even SMS, what is engaging your different supporters. What your folks engage with can give you an idea, right, of what excites them about the great work your team does. So in using these segmentation practices, also don't limit this information to just a one-time opportunity. If you have the tools or rather, if the tools you use allow this, save those queries, save those reports that you're building to identify those lists, or maybe even think about tools like what you might call a mass update, where you're essentially grouping folks from these different silos into one area. So again, as we talk about personalization, that could be something that you factor in. Pairing these values with your supporters can help you more easily identify, right, what is that relationship from with them to your organization. And just with the teams that I talk to, this is really a part of data hygiene, right? If we don't draw pictures with the data, we can miss patterns or simply just not get the most of your data at the end of the day.
Absolutely. And I think something to add on to what Jack was saying about not siloing these groups, there's a lot of really valuable, crossover when it comes to thinking about some of your supporter groups. And so there's a really good chance that people who are volunteering might have donated in the past, or vice versa, people who have donated who are looking to volunteer in some capacity. And so I think segmentation is really helpful, but it also allows you to build out these kind of further relationships and take these steps another step forward, essentially, to say, hey, you volunteered before and we've been sending you our typical volunteer outreach cadence, but now we really want to engage with you as a potential donor, or as a potential monthly donor or monthly volunteer or something like that. So I think segmentation and personalization really allow you to build those effective relationships where your supporters are able to give back in a really meaningful way, maybe in ways that they haven't before. And so, kind of with this idea, Jack kind of alluded to this already, but we really want your technology to be doing the work for you. And so, there are great ways that you can lean on your existing technology and automation to help you better understand your supporters and then subsequently craft perfect messaging for segmented outreach or personalized outreach. Even though we've been really harping on the value of personalization does not equal individually writing out every single email you send. And so it's just an idea of making your technology work for you, and whether that's effectively tracking and tagging in your CRM, or whether that's spitting out certain email cadences that you know work really well. It's just a matter of letting your technology do the work. And I know Jack is a big advocate of letting your technology do the work. So I'll let him chime in here as well as some of the tips you can really bring forward to make this happen.
Yes, we absolutely know that there's only so many hours in a day, and you are spinning many plates, as we typically say. But with that, depending on the tools that your team is using, of course, we know that you're still going to need to probably put in that work to draw out these relationships, like we've been talking about. Some systems out there, like Giveffect, have tools within them that can allow you to automate these workflows. For example, let's say you only want to send a certain year-end appeal for every person that gave to a specific event of yours that year, or that gave over a certain amount. Instead of collecting that data, querying for it, and then identifying your audience to send the appeal, set the filters you want in your CRM to track those automatically to then fire off those communications, right? Those email cadences that Grace was alluding to there. This can really give you a lot of time back in your day. Just like she said, we don't have to write out those emails individually, direct mail, of course, as well, to point out another method. So we want to be able to give you that time back in your day, technology across the board. Rather than just losing those hours. I know what it can feel like to spend those hours manipulating a complicated spreadsheet, and so we of course want to avoid that as much as possible. And maybe some of you don't have those, or feel like you don't have those tools, to do this for you automatically. At the very least, we always recommend that you try to set aside that time throughout the year, maybe even monthly as possible, to set up and run these reports so that once it is time to reach out, whether it's year end or whatever other kind of strategy you might be thinking of, you already have that data at your fingertips, right? You're not doing it at the last minute. A lot of times you can save these reports that you're creating, and so you don't have to waste that time, right, to rebuild them as you revisit them over time. So just some tidbits for you there in terms of giving you that time back in your day.
Absolutely. And kind of as we're thinking about this in terms of personalization and segmentation, this is also bringing us back to the idea of using that donor data that you do have and building out these really meaningful. So maybe you have a segment of people who are $25 to $50 donors and they get some really specific outreach that best suits them. And then you also have a segment of people that are major donors. And then somehow in the overlap, you have the opportunity of both those smaller donors and your major donors who are volunteers. And so, like Jack mentioned, it's really just making sure that you have this data available to you, and then you're able to make lemonade out of lemons and kind of set yourself up for really engaging personal and segmented outreach. And so that kind of leads us into our next idea, which is capitalize on existing partnerships. I'm sure a lot of you have existing partnerships in some capacity, whether it's previous event sponsors or local corporations that you have really strong bonds with, or maybe you just have great connections because a lot of your donors work at a nearby corporation or something like that. We'd really encourage you to capitalize on these partnerships ahead of end of year. So, corporate social responsibility or CSR initiatives have really had an uptick in recent years, especially as we continue to kind of navigate in the wake of the COVID pandemic and people are figuring out what does going back to work look like? What do events look like? As we're kind of figuring all of this out, we've seen this rise in CSR initiatives kind of across the board for companies. And so the good news there is there are lots more companies who were either already had their name in the hat or are looking to throw their name in the hat to get involved in some really great types of sponsorships. And so this is, I'm sure, nothing new to all of you, but some common types of sponsorships are financial, in kind, event sponsorships, promotional sponsorships. And so, what I'd really encourage you to do as you're thinking about this end of year strategy, or maybe as you're already thinking about the year 2023, I know it'll be here before we know it, is that these partnerships are really meant to serve your organization and the outlying community. And so, it's just a matter of finding ways that work for you. It can be something as simple as finding a great company nearby that's really mission aligned, and you're able to say, hey, we both really want the same thing, but how can we accomplish this together? Or maybe it's someone that you're already engaging with and you just take that into another step forward. And so this would be my big suggestion here is take your existing corporate partners and see if you can engage them in a new way. And this can look like a lot of different things. And I also think that it'll vary kind of from organization. You know what works best for you. You know what kind of your overarching goals are for the end of the year and heading into next year. But there's some really great ways that you can engage in this capacity. So maybe it's coordinating an exclusive end of year campaign for employees of a local corporation. So we have a lot of workplace giving initiatives in place here in Atlanta and kind of across the United States in general. And so that's a really great way to say, hey, nearby corporation, I know you have a bunch of great employees who have either benefited or directly supported our mission. Let's see if we can get a campaign going where any gift a employee of X corporation makes in the month of December is going to be matched at a 2-to-1 ratio instead of your usual 1-to-1 ratio. That's just a matter of asking and kind of facilitating those relationships and bringing those questions forward to see if that's something you can bring to the table. Similarly, but in a less financial way, maybe it's organizing a company wide volunteer day. We are seeing just a general uptick in this idea of VTO, which is volunteer time off, where companies allot time for their employees to go and work with organizations in and around the community. And so, if that's the case, maybe your organization jumps in on that. Maybe your school jumps in on that and says, hey, we're actually hoping to deliver X meals from our food bank by the end of the year. So, would your company like to engage in a volunteer day with us? Again, it's just this idea of putting yourself out there, asking these questions. I know it's like an age old adage of if you don't ask, you won't get. And that's simply kind of the idea here is that, especially if you have existing partnerships, that's a great way to get those employees engaged in a new way and kind of reaffirm their connection to your mission. You can also invite employees to participate in upcoming events. If you have like an end of year gala or something like that, or an end of year 5K, or anything like that, where you can kind of reach a wide variety of people or get them invested in a new way, especially if you have something that's kid friendly. I know that it can be really powerful to say, hey, come spend your Saturday with us. And not only that, you can bring your kids. And so that's just another way to kind of double down on this idea of giving back in a new way. And then, of course, remind employees of workplace giving opportunities. We'll talk more about this as it relates to following up on matching gifts, but this is a really great way to kind of keep those employees engaged and find even further those connections that you have with your existing corporate sponsors or partners. Jack, is there anything you'd like to add in terms of just capitalizing what you already have with your existing partners?
Yeah, as we head over to that next slide, Grace, maybe something I want to focus on here with you guys is I know this may be that first time asking that local corporation or company or organization, what have you. And so maybe you're not quite sure how many employees will be engaging, or you just don't have that information yet, right? That can really be that opportunity to not just learn more about that organization, but how many employees do they have? How many are inclined to give? That's where, when we talk about leveraging those partnerships, that's where you can start to gain even more information over time. And something really, I guess, what I want to point out here on screen that you're seeing is just, for example, within Giveffect, you can actually track employees within organizations, right? So they'll have their own separate contact records, but you're still seeing that relationship. We know that folks can move jobs frequently, especially nowadays, and so this does necessitate having up-to-date information. But whether it be employer history, church connections, friends, neighbors, family members, maybe there's an organization like Bank of America or Home Depot. This can be a way for you to easily track those employees and use those relationships over time, so that you're not chasing folks down to try and make that relationship. If you organize it, just sticking on that idea of a workplace giving campaign, you're not chasing those donors separately, right? That relationship is already there. And so that's one way, at least, you can start to leverage these and track them over time. And then lastly, this will help with your communication. Going forward, you can then organize your outreach based off of this information you now know after that first experience. And so this can be iterative.
Exactly. And like Jack mentioned, it kind of ties back into what we already talked about with the idea of personalization and segmentation. If you have a whole host of donors who are working for the Home Depot, maybe that's a segment that you kind of plan personalized outreach to. So, again, it's this idea of letting your technology do the work for you and really taking advantage of what you already know or what you're going to know soon because you've incorporated an ask for your end of year campaigns or something along those lines. And so the next kind of topic we're going to talk about is setting a goal and sharing it. And I know this can be a little bit controversial. It can be something that people go back and forth on, whether they want to set a goal, whether they set a goal and then decide to share it, or they keep it to themselves. It's really up to personal preference, but I do think that there is a lot of value in sharing a goal for an end of year fundraising campaign. And a lot of that just has to do with donor psychology and the way people feel inclined to give. People are often more motivated to give when a goal is close to being reached. So, one kind of tip that I want to recommend for everyone here is this idea of soft launching a campaign. So, let's say you're using a fundraising thermometer or something along the lines where there's very incremental steps where people are able to see the progress that's being made. I would really encourage you to soft launch your campaign, maybe reach out to some local supporters, people that you know are very invested and definitely going to give to your campaign, and see if you can get a couple of donations to kind of trickle into that fundraising thermometer before you go blast it out on like your social media campaign, because this is going to be something that really helps with the idea of social proof. Social proof is really positive among donors that, hey, all of these people are giving, so I should give to, especially when we're thinking about our own kind of social circles and who we are keeping in touch with, keeping in contact with. And so soft launching that campaign, getting a couple of donations to come in, and then going ahead and hard launching and say, hey, we're looking to raise X number, let's say $100,000 by December 31st. And then that way you've really already got that momentum. You're able to really get donors involved and excited about this. And again, it's this idea of people wanting to help you cross that fundraising finish line. People really love to be a part of a winning team. I know I do. And so being able to say like I helped this goal be met is going to be something that really resonates with donors. And this doesn't have to be something as outright and physical as a fundraising thermometer. Maybe you just send a weekly newsletter that updates your supporters on how close you are to reaching that goal. Or maybe you have a social media post at the end of every week that says, hey, we're this much closer, we're 70% of the way there, or so on and so forth. Whatever makes the most sense for your donors and your demographic. But I do think it can be really beneficial to share a goal and be really public about it and invite people to help you push towards that finish line. Jack, is there anything you want to add here about sharing your goal?
Yeah, so just a couple of quick things. Getting back to Grace's point on what you don't ask for, you don't get. Maybe take an example such as a gift matching campaign. Tell the folks that you're asking for the donations that it is a gift matching campaign. Getting back to that idea of social proof, or being more inclined to give, if they know their support will go farther and have that greater impact, that can really be a way to coax them to perhaps give more than they may have previously. And then secondly, I want to be I would want to mention here that don't limit yourself in terms of methods of communication. Like Grace mentioned, you have to meet people where they are. Reach out via social media. Maybe it is those email newsletters. Don't, as much as possible, try to expand those methods. Give them as many options as possible for folks to engage with you. Um, again, this goes back to what you know about your donors. What is that communication history? What do they seem to engage with the most? Then even that harkens back to our segmentation piece again. But again, it is fostering that community connection, and particularly as we get into more and more of this virtual world, these virtual connections, that is one way to foster a community. And so, again, just want to make sure that you guys come away with this knowing that by employing these strategies, using all the methods you have available, it can give you that ability to reach wider audiences than perhaps just those in your local community.
Absolutely. And I think kind of following up with this idea of setting a goal, when you reach your goal, be sure to follow up with your donors and highlight those who helped make it happen. And this also doesn't have to be strictly for your financial donors. Do you have people who volunteered their time? if you have some kind of event, do you have people who are engaging in that capacity? So this isn't going to be just financial donors or just volunteers. I would really encourage you to engage with everyone, kind of no matter the capacity, with engaging with your organization. And also, this can be a really engaging donor tactic as well, whether you're thanking your supporters in a really personalized way, saying, "Hi, thank you so much for your X dollar donation," or "Thank you for donating X hours of your time." These are great ways to really engage with the community and show your gratitude for what they've done. And then also, I know you're all probably familiar with this idea of nonprofit storytelling and showcasing your impact and actually quantifying, hey, thanks to your $100 donation, we were able to feed X families, or we were able to save 4 pets from euthanization at the shelter, or so on and so forth. So, again, this is going to be really specific to your organization and what works best for you. But I think that, kind of, again, thinking about personalization and segmentation when it comes to thanking your donors and your supporters is really important. And something that I actually saw recently that I just wanted to share with you all that could be a fun, engaging way to connect with your supporters on something as like busy and saturated as Giving Tuesday is this idea of asking for your donor's social media handle during the donation, and then having a like running thank you campaign on social media where they're able to not only get publicly recognized for their donation, but then also the great thing about social media is they can immediately go ahead and share that. And again, there's that social proof. There's that inclination to say, hey, this person that I care about and respect in my life just donated to an organization that is close to their heart. Let me find out more about their mission. Let me see if I can resonate there. And so something as simple as connecting with your donors online after the donation has been made, making that very public thank you is going to be something that's really special and can help you, again, cut through that noise on something as busy and saturated as Giving Tuesday. And you can also do something like this with donor walls or any kind of public thank you recognition. I remember growing up, I would always see when you donated like $4 or $5 at a restaurant and they would give you a little certificate to put up on the wall. That was something I always tried to convince my parents to let me do because I wanted my name to be up on the wall. And so it really is this idea of giving people the recognition and acknowledging their contributions to your cause. And one thing I do want to call out here is that you may not always reach your goal. Sometimes you may be setting a lofty goal, or you may be going really out and you're trying to hit a home run, which is always exciting. And I would encourage you guys to be really realistic and excited about what you're able to do and what your organization can accomplish. But in the off chance that you don't reach your goal, that's okay. And I would encourage you to continue to be transparent with your supporters. I think that's becoming really necessary, kind of in both consumers and supporters opinions of businesses and companies they engage with, is this idea of transparency and knowing where their dollars are going, or what kind of the working conditions that the companies that they're supporting have, and so on and so forth. And so I would really encourage you to continue to be transparent and to engage and say, hey, we are still $5,000 away from our Giving Tuesday goal. So we're going to take this and push it into our end of year giving season, and really kind of re-engage with those supporters and check back in with those who maybe haven't donated yet or who have donated but might be eligible for a matching gift. And again, just finding those pieces where it makes sense to engage with your donors and your supporters to connect them and bring them back into your mission. Jack, is there anything you want to add in here about really being transparent or saying thank you?
No, I would just very much echo, whether it's the on the recognition side or again, exactly with that transparency side. Don't shy away from not reaching that goal. While it can be disappointing in the moment, it can be, again, treat it as another opportunity that you can leverage in the future. This doesn't have to be the end all be all. So absolutely, I'd say keep that in mind.
Awesome, thanks. And so our next thing that we're going to talk about is this idea of following up on matching gifts. And this coincides really nicely with our idea of capitalizing on existing partnerships, and also fits into this idea of personalization and segmentation as well. And so really, to follow up on matching gifts can be especially timely around the end of the year. And so the biggest barrier to receiving matching gift funds at any organization is just this lack of donor awareness. And so this lack of donor awareness translates to a pretty big chunk of change being left on the table That's looking like $4 to $7 billion in matching gift revenue going unclaimed annually. And the thing here is that that $4 to $7 billion is already being allocated towards CSR initiatives, corporate philanthropy initiatives. And so it's really this money that is quite literally being left on the table if donors aren't taking the next steps to kind of pursue those matching gifts and take advantage of that. And so 78% of match eligible donors have no idea whether their employer offers a matching gift program or not. This is something that we found in the research that we've done at Double the Donation. And so, with nearly 80% of people not even knowing whether or not these programs are available to them, that's going to be the biggest barrier. And so, our goal with following up on matching gifts throughout kind of end of year giving season is going to be to close that donor awareness gap and make those connections as much as possible so donors are really able to pursue these matching gifts and demystify this whole process. So, with kind of like we talked about with capitalizing on existing partnerships, with recent kind of upticks in corporate philanthropy programs and more of an emphasis on being public and forthcoming about these programs, over 26 million individuals in the United States are eligible for matching gifts. But again, like we just talked about, that 80%, they're likely unaware. And so the idea here is to encourage your donors from throughout 2022. So whether they're going to be a Giving Tuesday donor, whether they're going to be a December 31st, right at the end of the year donor, or whether they were a donor from March of this year, you should really encourage them to check their eligibility and pursue a matching gift. And the reason for this is that the majority of corporate matching gift programs have a submission deadline that's timed around the end of the calendar year. And so, if you're thinking about heading into the December months and meeting your goals and trying to figure all of those things out, there's a good chance that some of your donors from the months of January, February, March, and so on and so forth may still be eligible for a matching gift. It's just a matter of connecting those dots for them and making sure they kind of understand where they are in the process and what kind of next steps they can take. And so, again, we see this barrier is donor awareness. And so our goal would be to simplify the matching gift process as much as possible with those direct, personalized calls to action. So again, we're really coming back to this idea of personalization and how it can be really meaningful for both your organization and your donors to be able to connect accordingly. And so, to give you guys kind of a breakdown of how this process works and help you better understand what this can look like, there's essentially a 5 step process when it comes to matching gifts. So, step one, I'm sure you're all familiar with. Everyone knows this. This is the easiest step of them all. The individual donates to a nonprofit. So, they're making an individual contribution, whether that's online, over the phone, they're sending it back in a direct mail solicitation, whatever that's looking like, they're donating to your organization. The next step would be the individual checks their own eligibility for a company gift match. There's quite a few different guidelines when it comes to matching gift eligibility. So, this is where it can get a little confusing for donors. But again, this is where you really want to kind of steward them through the process and say, hey, we're right there with you. Let's keep you connected through this process. And then step three, they submit the request for their gift match. For the majority of companies, this means they're using some kind of online portal. We see the majority of companies and corporations using like a third party vendor to manage these programs and facilitate the matching gift program and then subsequently distribute the funds. Then the company would review that matching gift request. Again, they're using some kind of vendor, say, hey, yes, this checks our company guidelines. They met the minimum donation, they met the maximum donation, they are within our employee eligibility. So they check that on the back end. And then step five, the company actually matches the donation and distributes the funds to your organization. So, while it is not a super complicated process, I think there can be a lot of question marks, especially if it's something that maybe was never talked about outside of an HR office, or maybe it's on that page 24 of the employee benefits handbook and you just haven't gotten there yet. So, again, it's really this idea of complementing the donation process with matching gifts and following up with those donors from throughout the year. And so we have a couple of recommended best practices that you can kind of implement going forward to be able to take advantage of these programs and really connect your donors to the process as easily and as quickly as possible. And so, first and foremost, our biggest best practice would be to capture employment information directly on your donation form. So, you can see this in the photo example on the right of a standard donation form. They select their donation amount, and then they can go ahead and type their company into an optional search field. And then from there, you can easily provide your supporters with personalized, actionable next steps after they've completed the donation. And this is also a really great way to introduce matching gifts early on in the process. You're able to say, hey, thank you so much for kind of making this gift as you're going through. See if your gift qualifies for employer gift matching programs. And you're kind of getting that ball rolling before they've even completed the donation. We do want to minimize donor abandonment. So we definitely would encourage that this field be optional. But it's something that donors are inclined to use. They're inclined to kind of leverage and take advantage of once they know those programs are available to them. And our next kind of recommended best practice here coincides with that first one, which is to provide personalized. Again, we're really harping on that personalization aspect here, but it really is so helpful to provide those direct calls to action on your donation confirmation page so donors can quickly and easily submit their matching gift request. So this is actually entirely possible through the Double the Donation and Give Effect partnership. And so this is something as simple as embedding that search tool on your form and then getting it set up where this confirmation page populates with the information they provided on that donation form. And they can click right through, go to the matching gift form, and take advantage and get started. This will, for most of them, will take them directly to log in to their own portal. And it really, again, demystifies that process, makes it simple, makes it easy because we just want to connect donors to their next steps. And again, thinking about personalization that we talked about earlier, this is a really streamlined way to take advantage of the information that your donor is providing. You know where they work now, and so you can kind of take those next steps to pursue this matching gift opportunity and really set them up for success. Jack, is there anything you'd like to add here about kind of using these personalized calls to action?
Hmm. Well, yeah. Well, actually, I do want to go back, really just to and echo a couple of points on. I understand that some of you may not have those tools that allow for this kind of direct integration relationship. I would certainly recommend that you seek those out, because again, just to hammer home the point that catching them on the front end, and I know you all know this, is going to be much easier than trying to chase them down on the back end. And then, like we said earlier, a lot of folks just don't know that their workplace might qualify. And so again, even if maybe they're not interested at the beginning, at the very least, that question is within the form, and then they can think, oh, well, wait a second, how about where I work? I wonder if we show up here. That could be a way to essentially get them on that glide path. Um, and then I do just want to, going back to something we said earlier on, not leaving that money on the table. And so just sharing, a couple of things, at least in terms of the teams that I work with. One of our clients that implemented this from 2021 to 2022 saw a 63% increase in those gift matching funds. And whether it's teams that are raising an additional 12,000, maybe 17,000, 24,000. Again, while there is work that goes into these processes and these calls to action, it can really pay off. And so again, we just want to hammer home that these can be ways that you're no longer leaving money on the table, and these kinds of partnerships or use of technology can ensure that you have that time in your day to execute this in the first place, and then to even going back to something we mentioned earlier on, now you have those relationships. And let's say certain workplaces don't match that gift for whatever reason. Maybe it doesn't reach a certain eligibility requirement. At the very least, you now have information on that relationship that you can use in the future. So just like we said, maybe it's a first time workplace giving campaign. It could even be from the individual side as well, that relationship is introduced and you have that data to work off of going forward.
Absolutely. And I think that's another great kind of point here is this idea of just introducing this to donors. And we've seen in some of the research that we've done at Double the Donation that individuals respond really well to these calls to action, especially when they know they're able to make their donation go that much further without having to reach back into their own wallet. I think the stat is 1 in 3 individuals are more likely to give a gift if they know their donation is matched. Because again, if you're thinking, I'm able to give X amount of money, but I'd really love to give more. And then you have a very tangible opportunity that presents you with that ability to give more without asking more of yourself financially. That's a really compelling opportunity. And it's a great stewardship opportunity as well, because if a donor is going that extra mile to pursue a matching gift, they're really engaged with your organization, they're really connected, and that allows you to kind of build this lasting relationship and kind of lean on each other in ways that work best for meeting the donor where they're at, like Jack mentioned earlier. And then our last kind of best practice as it relates to following up on matching gifts is following up with donors post transaction about their matching gift eligibility with targeted email campaigns. And again, this is going to lean back into our personalization and segmentation tools that we talked about earlier. But with something like 360 Match Pro, you're able to send these automated emails from your organization. So you can update it to come from your domain. You can update it with your branding and all of those elements to make sure that you're able to send messaging that your donors connect with. You don't want to kind of add any more friction or make it seem like they're coming from like somewhere else, or they might disregard it or not understand. So being able to kind of really engage in a way that makes sense with your branding and your messaging, even the language that you use, is going to go a really long way when it comes to sending these emails. And then again, we're really, really doubling down on that idea of personalization. So in this example here, you see that we're excited to let you know that your donation of $100 is eligible for a matching gift from the Home Depot. And so it's again making those personal call outs, making a really direct call to action where if that person were to click that blue click here button, it's going to take them directly to that Home Depot login. And so you really just want to demystify the process, kind of set up those stepping stones to make it really easy for a donor to pursue a matching gift. And then, of course, we've seen people who get kind of so empowered by this matching gift is that they're going to set themselves up to pursue a matching gift from here on out. Once they kind of know these opportunities are available to them, maybe this year they gave $50 and turned it into 100, but next year they're so equipped and ready with their matching gift knowledge that they are making a $100 gift and turning it into $200. So I think this is a really great way to retain donors and keep them kind of at the top of mind when it comes to matching gifts in general. And it's also, as we think about, I know Jack touched on this earlier, of people moving around and changing companies. And this is a great way, if they know about matching gifts from the get go, they can kind of pursue matching gift opportunities at a new company. They can bring it up. They can kind of pursue those opportunities if they're not there already. If they're looking into corporate sponsorship opportunities, corporate partnerships, those are all a really great way to kind of engage and bring workplace giving and these type of partnerships to the forefront. And then one pro tip as we're thinking about end of year especially is that recurring donation recurring donations, excuse me, can still be eligible for matching gifts. And so encourage your monthly or recurring donors to check their eligibility and then they can batch those donations at the end of the year. So if you have a donor who's giving 12 times across the span of a year, they can actually go in and make a request for all 12 donations from their employer and get that lump sum matched at the end of the year. Or if they'd rather go in and request that matching gift after every donation each month, they're able to do that as well. And so I just think this is a really great opportunity because more than likely someone who is a recurring donator is always already really in tune to your messaging. They're already really engaged with your organization. And so there's a really good chance that if they're eligible, they're going to pursue this opportunity. It's again just a matter of closing that donor awareness gap and making sure they're able to pursue these opportunities accordingly. And then our last kind of strategy that we're going to touch on here before we open the floor to any outside client questions is to get creative with your outreach. And this is going to look different, of course, for every organization. This is going to change kind of based on your demographic, based on what groups you're segmenting by, kind of what your supporters' preferred style of engagement is. But as we think about end of year giving, we'd really encourage you to get creative, especially as we think about something like Giving Tuesday, because nonprofits everywhere are going to be vying for attention on Giving Tuesday. And I do want to call out, I know some people are a little iffy on how they feel about Giving Tuesday, but I would really encourage you all to engage with it in some capacity because it really is a powerful community and it really is a powerful way to engage. So make sure you're raising your hand on Giving Tuesday, putting yourself out there. And then just find ways to differentiate your outreach leading up to November 29th, that Giving Tuesday, and after that. And so, again, this is going to be different from organization to organization, but know your audience and tailor your plan accordingly. So, whether you have a younger audience that's really prevalent on social media and responds really well, whether you have direct mail appeals that are really successful. Maybe your supporters really love phone calls. You have a really personal relationship with your donors in that way. Whatever kind of makes the most sense for your outreach plan, that's a great way to kind of engage with your supporters in that way. And I'd also encourage you all to leverage resources from the creators of Giving Tuesday. Giving Tuesday is a great way to kind of get engaged, like I mentioned. And the creators of Giving Tuesday put a lot of really valuable resources out there that are free to access. And so this slide is accessible if you want to download it and then click through to that link to kind of check out some of the resources that Giving Tuesday puts out. And then, of course, kind of what we talked about as it relates to sharing a goal and saying thank you is celebrate your supporters' generosity and highlight what your organization is going to be able to do with their support or what you're going to be able to do with their additional matching gift. I think it's a really great time to get creative and to try things out and be experimental with your outreach because there's so much opportunity there. Jack, what do you think?
Yeah, well, honestly, something I did want to go back to for just a moment here. When we think about capturing this data and using it as we go forward, is you can also start to look at. We talked about those employee relationships, for instance. That this can also give you the opportunity, as you're tracking this data in your CRM, track both those hard credits and soft credits, right? So that you are still giving that credit to perhaps whether it's the employee themselves or maybe it's multiple employees, right? Through, let's say it's that workplace giving or some kind of corporate gift matching campaign. Those are things that you should be able to collect in your CRM and use down the line, both for those analytical purposes, right? Let's segment based off who those folks who were soft credited over the past year, right? Again, as we think about those silos, right? That can be just one piece that we filter in as we think about maybe it's our Libent report. Let's add that component in. So just to also chime back in again on the data component, and again, just don't let the data sit there on the shelf. Use it as much as possible as you're tracking these relationships.
Awesome. Thanks, Jack. And then lastly, and as it relates to getting creative with your outreach, again, coming back to this idea of letting technology do the work for you or really taking advantage of the resources that are already available. So Canva for nonprofits is actually free and gives you premium access to create really beautiful graphics and materials. I know these go a really long way on social media. I'm a big fan of Canva and what you're able to do with your own kind of branding and coloring and messaging to create some really great templates. And then actually Giving Tuesday offers some free Canva templates. Oh my goodness. Um, and so you're able to kind of use those as well to better engage with the Giving Tuesday kind of logo and theming, whether you're using the hashtag or maybe you're just engaging on social media. And like I said, raising your hand and putting your organization out there. And then another really great tip that I saw that I think could be really cool, depending on kind of your supporter demographic, is sending a Giving Tuesday calendar invite to hold that day on your supporters' individual kind of personal calendars. This is something that could be really cool and could go a long way as just a reminder. It could be as simple as just kind of sending the calendar invite in an email, and then whether or not they actually put that on their personal calendar is kind of up to their discretion. But I think this could be a really awesome way to kind of engage and take the donor one step further and just remind them to everyone loves kind of something to rally behind. I think that's why Giving Tuesday does so well. Thinking about things like Black Friday or Cyber Monday as well, it's all just kind of like a rallying cry of how can we bring these elements together and really push forward as a community. And so when you're thinking about engaging your supporters on Giving Tuesday, that can be a really great way. And then also providing social media graphics and calls to action after the donation can go a really long way so your supporters can spread the word. Similar to what we talked about with some kind of very public thank you campaign is Allow your donors to be advocates for you, because more than likely they have a connection to your organization. They have a why behind their giving, whether it's relational, familial, emotional, geographical, even. There's something that is compelling them to give. And so allow your donors to tell their own story and kind of take that and run with it. So it can be something as simple as maybe your logo on a graphic and then a blank, here's why I give. And they fill that out and they post that on their story. But it's really just setting your supporters up for these opportunities to be an advocate and share your organization far and wide, because more than likely they will. It's the same kind of concept as if they know about matching gifts, they're going to pursue those opportunities. You just kind of want to open that door and lay out the red carpet for them to take those next steps.
Yeah, and again, this can also come back to those different methods of communication we've mentioned. Incorporate that text to give, right? Meet people where they are, and this can also be a place where, again, as we talk about, letting the technology do the work for you. Once you use these great design tools, you don't have to worry about reaching out to those folks individually. Set up those email drips, set up those scheduled emails or scheduled SMS campaigns to go out over time, and asking them those questions, exactly like Grace said, of how would you state your support? What engages you with our organization? So again, another place where we don't have to worry about taking the time out of our day. Let that technology do the work.
Absolutely. And hopefully these are things that you can implement in just a few hours time. You don't have to be a graphic designer to really like make the most of this, but it's just a matter of kind of putting in that initial effort and letting it flow all throughout end of year giving season to really push your mission forward and take that time for donors and supporters alike to engage in a way that makes the most sense for them. And so that kind of concludes the five strategies that we wanted to talk about today. And I want to go ahead and open the floor to any specific questions. Maybe it's about one of the strategies we talked about or anything that you'd just like to ask as you kind of plan for end of year giving season. So I see some people typing in the chat. So I'll go ahead and give everyone a second to get their questions in. I do just want to say thank you to Jack for joining us today. I really appreciate all of your expertise and everything that you shared. And hopefully everyone found these tips really helpful and kind of engaging for the end of year giving season.
Likewise, absolutely glad to be here.
Awesome. So thank you, Taylor, for being here. While we wait and check out a couple of more questions, we do have a few that came in before the presentation. So I will go ahead and open up that and ask kind of what those questions are and see what we've got ahead of time. So one question I'm seeing here is, Jack, I think this one would be for you. Can you expand more on how to track employee relationships or interactions?
Yeah, so I think this can really depend on how are you collecting that information. I guess that's one entry point we could talk about. For instance, I know that we were talking about the direct integration where you're pulling up your company from the employee form, but maybe that's not a tool you're currently using. A lot of times, you can be able to add forms or at least individual questions to your giving form, or let's say it's your event page to gather that supplementary information. Maybe it's a survey that you send out post your event, because maybe you struck up some conversations with folks and you know that there may be some workplace giving opportunities here. I think those are just a couple of ways in terms of getting this information from folks, incorporating it into your current strategies, or perhaps breaking it off into its own. I think both can be a way to engage folks.
Absolutely. Thanks for sharing, Jack. And I think that's really helpful as well. And I'm seeing another question here. What are some great donor management databases to help capture all the strategies mentioned here? And I can't give you an exact answer as to what I think would be the best thing here, because it's really going to come down to what are you looking for and what are you hoping for in terms of what you're kind of doing with your system as it stands right now, or what you're hoping to accomplish ahead of end of year giving season or looking into 2023. But I would really encourage you to check out the Double the Donation integrations page and see some of the different providers we work with, like Giveffect and some of our other kind of platforms available to really figure out what options are going to work best for you. And I think there's a lot of great examples out there of ways you can implement the strategies we talked about here to really share what's going to work best for your organization. Jack, do you have any tips on like how you can best narrow down what software might work best for you?
Yeah. So of course, a couple of things that teams can think about is how big is the team. For instance, we know that smaller teams, there's a lot more on your plate, and really, whether it's a tool like Giveffect or others, of course, for being with that team, that can really be a new member of your staff, or perhaps even a replacement in some instances. Because again, whether it's once you have these processes set in place, and get your strategy down, again, a lot of these automated tools, particularly within Giveffect. Of course, if any of you have questions about us or want to learn more, you see the contact information here. Um, but 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 yeah, I think that's what I would say there.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And that's something we like to say too is that the idea of a tool like 360 Match Pro or any kind of software with this idea of letting technology do the work for you is we want to lessen your burden, never add more to it. And so you want to find a database or a software or a management system that's going to be able to be like an extension of your employees and not kind of a barrier to them or to add more to their plate or anything like that. So I think as you're thinking about that, really consider what's going to make the most sense for your team. What's kind of your experience level with software in general? Do you want something that's very hands on? Do you want a lot of support? Do you want a lot of kind of hours to walk through things? Or would you prefer to kind of set it and forget it and leave it there? And again, utilize those automation pieces where you're saying, okay, I want to go into this once a month and that's it. And so I think really coming into kind of the software search with an informed mind of what that's going to look like and what's on your must haves versus your we can live without, almost like buying a house. I'm envisioning like a house hunters situation of like this is what we have to have, but this is what we can live without.
Yeah, and I really want to emphasize, support here is extremely key, right? Not just necessarily the ability to reach out to someone to ask questions. We think that's a differentiator for us at Giveffect, whether it's our live chat support tool, or reaching out to your own dedicated account manager. But it's not just the answer my questions as I have them and come to you. A lot of resources, you're going to want to ask as you're searching out there is what kind of resources can you provide me, right? You guys work with nonprofits every single day. Surely there's information you can provide. Maybe it's video tutorials, maybe it's FAQ articles. Those are things that we provide as well, because we know that you may not know what you don't know. And so again, just making sure you have that information at your fingertips. Maybe it's your first time jumping into this kind of role. It doesn't do as much good to have support if you're not quite sure where to start. And so I think both of those are aspects I'd recommend for any team as you're searching for different tools and what maybe your specific organization's needs are.
Absolutely. And I know we're coming up close to our kind of 1 hour mark for time. So I would encourage anyone to leave any last minute questions in the chat. Or if we haven't gotten to your question or you want to talk more specifically about your organization in particular, feel free to reach out. Like Jack mentioned, we have some contact information on the screen. And so we'd love to kind of connect with you offline and make sure that we're able to get all of your questions answered and get you set up for a really fruitful giving season. But like I said, I really appreciate everyone joining us today and taking a little bit of time out of what I imagine are really busy schedules to learn from Jack and I. And again, Jack, thank you so much for being here. And I hope everyone has a great rest of their afternoon.
Yeah, great chat with you all. Everybody take care.